Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. One of the most eminent judges of the Supreme Court retires on the 16th of June, but because the Supreme Court is on its summer vacation, he actually hasn't been working since Friday the 19th. Yet Justice K.M. Joseph leaves behind a remarkable legacy. What he's done and said about the Election Commission and hate speech will long be remembered. But it's also true that he's disliked by the Modi government and he's paid a personal price for that. Joining me now to assess the legacy of Justice K.M. Joseph and the impact he will have is one of the Supreme Court's more outstanding lawyers, a former president of the Supreme Court Bar Association, Dushyant Dave. Mr. Dave, let me start with a simple question. As one of the country's outstanding lawyers, what is your overall opinion of Justice Joseph as a judge?
Well, I think he was a great judge. There's no doubt about it. And he had all the qualities that a judge should possess. Particularly, he had phenomenal judicial temperament. And judicial temperament comprises of many things: patience, open-mindedness, courtesy, tact, courage, punctuality, firmness, understanding, compassion, humility, and common sense. He combined all these virtues in himself. And, as a result of that, his approach and his judgments were always humane in nature. And that is what makes Justice Joseph a very, very, a distinguished judge of, away from most judges that you come across in the country today.
Now, the 19th was not only Justice Joseph's last day in the Supreme Court, it was also the last day for Justice Ajay Rastogi and Justice V. Ramasubramanian. According to Dhananjay Mahapatra of the Times of India, whilst the Attorney General and Solicitor General spoke effusively about the other two retiring judges, the Attorney General apparently only spent 1 minute 20 seconds bidding farewell to Justice Joseph. And believe it or not, the Solicitor General managed to do that in just 10 seconds. Quite what you say in 10 seconds is remarkable, unless I'm guessing it's simply goodbye and good riddance. What do you make of this apparent lack of courtesy from the Attorney General and the Solicitor General?
Well, I'm astonished at the Attorney General because I consider him a very fine human being. And so far as Solicitor General is concerned, his hostility to Justice Joseph was well known in the court. But I must say that, yes, the government, of the day is definitely not happy about fiercely independent and courageous judges. It, in fact, positively dislikes them. And Justice Joseph was truly a courageous judge who followed the course, even though it was not a popular one. And he had the integrity where he was not influenced by identity, race, gender, political status, wealth, or relationship of the party before the judge. So he combined integrity and courage very beautifully, which the government naturally didn't like. and he reflected, these characteristics in his judicial approach. And therefore, in many matters, he took view which was, in upholding the constitution and the constitutional morality, and upholding the fundamental rights, dignity, and human rights of citizens. And that's where the government perhaps did not like Justice Joseph, and both the law officers. I am sorry, I didn't know this, I was not present, but I'm sorry that both the law officers did not show sufficient respect to Justice Joseph if they could show it to the other two judges.
Let's come to some of the key cases that Justice Joseph decided. And let's start with the one that he was hearing when he retired but was unable to complete. I'm talking about the Bilkis Bano case. Live Law reports that the final hearing could not happen because lawyers appearing for the convicts raised disputes about receiving Bilkis Bano's affidavit. Justice Joseph offered to sit during the vacation period prior to his retirement to conclude the matter, but the Solicitor General flatly said no. Ultimately, this is what Justice Joseph said in open court. I'm quoting him. It is clear what is being attempted here. I will retire on June the 16th. Since that is during the vacation, my last working day is Friday, May 19th. It is obvious you do not want this bench to hear this matter, but this is not fair to me. Do you agree that Justice Joseph was treated badly in this instance?
Well, there is no doubt that, those who appearing for either, the people, the accused who were freed, and the government itself, which had, given them the freedom, both were not interested in having the matter heard, especially by the bench of Justices Joseph and Justice Nagaratna. And therefore, they, took every possible measure or step to ensure that the matter is not heard in time. I must say, however, with regret, that Justice Joseph, I think, did not act with the firmness which is expected of a judge. When the judge realizes that the parties are avoiding his court and trying to, delay the conclusion of the proceedings, the judge should have come down heavily and said, nothing doing. I will hear this matter tomorrow, whether you like it or not, and I'll finish with it. So that is something which, I feel that a judge, Justice Joseph, to that extent, I would say, was a noble judge. He did not want to leave an impression that he was wanting to decide this case come what may. So perhaps he felt, a little reluctant. But I have known judges, for example, my hero has been Chief Justice P.D. Desai, who was a Chief Justice originally from Gujarat, but Chief Justice of Himachal, Calcutta and Bombay. And he would not have allowed this even for a second. And he would have ensured that, matter proceeds within as quickly as possible, and it is concluded before him. Because I feel that efforts to, do forum shopping on the parts, especially of the government's top lawyers, is extremely repulsive, and it should be treated with contempt by the judges.
Just to clarify, do you believe that the judge should have been tougher and firmer and insisted that I will hear this case and we will begin the hearings tomorrow and not postpone them? Do you think he was reluctant to take that firm stand because the press had concluded from comments he'd made, what are called obiter dicta, that he was likely to conclude that those convicts had been wrongly released from jail prematurely? Is that why he hesitated, because of that impression in the media?
I don't know about the impression, but I do definitely know one thing. The matter was assigned to his bench long back, and he had sufficient time to complete the hearings. So to that extent, I definitely feel, because, the other benches, for example, decided the matter post haste. When Justice Rastogi's bench, decided the matter, I mean, they should have been much slower in deciding what they were, likely to decide. And they should have been very, very circumspect about the outcome, because this was one of the most heinous crimes in the history of postmodern India, democratic India. And therefore, that case should have been handled with great, care and great, humane approach, rather than a legalistic approach that the court may have adopted at that point of time. So I feel that, yes, Justice Joseph was right in expressing anguish But I do believe that Justice Joseph should have been much more firmer and should have concluded the hearing, whether the Solicitor General participated or not. He should have just gone ahead.
Is this a small black mark on Justice Joseph's career?
It's not a black mark, but it certainly is. I mean, those of us who love, human rights, those of us who love, constitutional values, and those of us who know that in Gujarat, virtually every riot case has turned out into acquittals, and as if the riots never took place, as if 2,000 men, innocent men, women, and children never died. And therefore, it is really sad that the few opportunity that came across to the Supreme Court. For example, earlier, way back, Justice, I think it was Justice Raju and Justice Pasayat, who, earlier in this riot-related cases, took an extremely tough stand and directed government of Gujarat to have proper investigations, constitute SITs, etc. So I think this was definitely a disappointment personally to me, and I'm sure to many people who love humanity in this country.
You mentioned Justice Arijit Pasayat and Justice Durai Swami Raju. I believe they were the two judges, and I'll simply say this for the audience, who in April 2014, in a written judgment delivered from the Supreme Court, referred to Narendra Modi as a modern-day Nero who deliberately looks the other way as innocent children and helpless women burned to death. Going on to say, perhaps contemplating how to help those who are guilty. I'm repeating that quotation from memory. I'm pretty sure it's accurate. But let's move on. That is perhaps one reason why you admire Justice Pasayat and Justice Raju. Let's come to Justice Joseph's key judgments. Heading a constitution bench, he ruled that the appointment of members of the Election Commission should no longer be done by the Prime Minister alone, but by a panel comprising the Prime Minister, the Chief Justice of India, and the leader of the opposition or the leader of the single largest opposition party. Practically all the election commissioners welcomed this. The media overwhelmingly endorsed it. As a lawyer, how significant a judgment was this?
It is, it's very extremely significant because, to maintain democracy, purity in elections is a condition precedent. And that purity we are all seeing has been seriously diluted over the years, especially after 2014. And the result is, the cause is very clear. It's because of the kind of appointments which are being made to the Election Commission of India, which is a constitutional body. And the election commissioners have singularly failed again and again being fair in the election process, and are completely, it's time and again they have proved to be biased in favor of the ruling party and biased against the opposition parties in their actions or inactions. So I think this was a very, very serious issue. See, you must understand one thing. Justice Joseph, and of course his colleagues on that bench, I must say that hats off to those colleagues also having given a unanimous decision. But Justice Joseph reflects something which is, very, I would say, striking in his character, which every judge must possess. It's not enough that you are an intellectual giant and you can give, judgments in which there are brilliant passages given. But if you are not willing to give relief ultimately, to the citizens or to uphold the constitutional values to the hilt, then what's the point of writing good judgments? It is important for every judge today to realize in the country that country is facing a challenge to the existence of the constitution and the constitutional values. Now, therefore, judges have to be very, very circumspect and visit their intellectual wisdom with actual orders so that the government can be stopped from doing something which is unconstitutional. Take, for example, the Maharashtra judgment which another constitution bench gave, in which you hold that governor acted unconstitutionally, you hold speaker acted unconstitutionally, you hold that the whip was completely wrong what he did, and yet you say that we will not give relief because the chief minister resigned. But the chief minister came to Supreme Court for a stay, you didn't give him a stay. And chief minister had no option but to resign because that was the inevitable consequence that day. Now, when you therefore find that every authority has overstepped, then it is the bounden duty of the Supreme Court to say, forget everything else. You have acted unconstitutionally. You cannot continue to enjoy the fruits of your illegality. That's where, there is a difference between judges like Justice Joseph and other judges who are equally brilliant and write beautiful intellectual, judgments for, law students to read. But that's something which troubles me. Take, for example, the case of these wrestlers. The matter came to Supreme Court. Supreme Court was happy that FIR is registered and disposed it of. I mean, till today, this man has not even been arrested. Look at the insult to the women of this country. Look, everybody knows that rot has set in every sports association. Now, therefore, judges can't shut their eyes and simply say, we will not. They must constantly monitor these kind of cases. And that's where I feel that judges like Joseph will go down in history as being hugely respected, admired, and loved.
As you said, Justice Joseph wasn't just an intellectual giant, but he had the courage and he had the wisdom to deliver orders that would correct matters. Now, in this specific instance, where he determined how the election commissioners would hereafter be chosen, do you think it's a significant step that will ensure that in future, we do not believe that election commissions behave partially, that they side with the government? That is the great charge they faced for almost 9 years. Do you think this order will end that rot?
No, it won't. Look at the CBI director's appointment. Chief Justice of India is a party to the appointment process along with the Prime Minister and leader of opposition. Yet, CBI director after director has not shown the kind of independence which is expected of him. See, why is it that our problem is different? Our problem is that unless judiciary, there is only one institution which can now really keep checks and balance on the executive, and that's the judiciary. And judiciary is missing this again and again. Take, for example, these hate speeches in which Justice Joseph has given this brilliant judgment.
Let me stop you there. That is precisely the second judgment I wanted to raise. Let me ask the question, then you go on to talk about it. In the case of the hate speech judgment, Justice Joseph clearly ruled that all states and union territories must take suo motu action without waiting for a formal complaint in such cases. Now, as you know, hate speech has proliferated, particularly in the last 9 years, and a lot of that is because of things said by members either of the BJP, sometimes sadly the government, quite often members of the Sangh Parivar. How effective a remedy was Justice Joseph's decision that union territories and states must take suo motu action without waiting for a formal complaint?
The judgment, is the law of the land, and it binds everybody, including the executive and the police. Question is, will it be acted upon? I think I have my serious doubts whether the BJP-run states will implement it. In the opposition states, yes, it will be implemented in letter and spirit. But so far as Government of India is concerned and the BJP-ruled states are concerned, I think the judgment will not be implemented at all. Take, for example, the statements which were made by none other than Honorable Minister and Honorable Member of Parliament, which led to the riots in Delhi. I mean, no action has been taken so far. So I feel, but yes, the judgment is a tremendous fillip to, the rights of the citizens. That yes, if you are a victim of hate speech, then at least you have now a remedy to go to the court and ask the court that please direct a lodging of an FIR and let law take its own course. So I think to that extent, it's a protective umbrella for the citizens.
That reference that you made to a minister of the government indulging in hate speech and no action being taken, I take it was a reference to Anurag Thakur and Goli Maro Salonko.
Correct. That's correct.
Let me raise one other judgment that Justice Joseph is the author of, and which was a critical judgment at the time, but it was when he was Chief Justice of the Uttarakhand High Court. In 2016, he declared the dismissal of the Harish Rawat government unconstitutional. And it was a major blow to the Modi government, which at the time was not even 2 years old. How impressive was that judgment coming from someone who was a high court judge and someone who would have perhaps guessed that this would put him on the wrong side of the Modi government?
I think it was a brilliant judgment. It was a correct judgment, and it really upheld the constitutionalism. because the imposition of the president's rule was completely unconstitutional. And to my mind, it was an act of mala fide action on the part of the government of India. And the presidential order was clearly bad. So I think for him as a Chief Justice of the High Court to have delivered that judgment clearly reflects and shows his determination and his love for Constitution and his love for ultimate, decision-making process. He is not interested in just some fine nicety and writing some brilliant passages and then not giving relief. We have a very interesting, phrase for it. Operation successful, patient dead. So that's something which, most judges do, because they don't really carry their intellectualism to the ultimate, result. And this is where there is a serious problem, because they don't have the kind of courage that Justice Joseph reflects. There are many judges who have that kind of courage today in the Supreme Court. So, many of them are outstanding judges. Won't be able to name, but there are many judges who are outstanding. There are some judges in high courts, very few, who are today good. But by and large, across the country, most judges are singularly lacking this final courage which is required. And this is where Justice Joseph stood out. And he was not worried that he may not come to Supreme Court on account of that judgment. So that again shows that he really, what mattered to him was his love for law and not the position that he was likely to lose.
In fact, the truth is he almost didn't go to the Supreme Court, or at least going to the Supreme Court was substantially delayed by the Modi government, just because he had overturned the dismissal of the Harish Rawat government in Uttarakhand. He was deliberately delayed. It was only on reiteration, maybe once or twice, that the Modi government accepted his nomination and agreed to make him a Supreme Court judge. With reference to specifically that, the Quint reports Justice Joseph conducted himself with dignity, neither expressing displeasure nor disquiet. Would you agree?
Absolutely. His court conduct was impeccable. Absolutely impeccable. He never told anybody that get out of my court. Whatever may have been the provocation, he never did that. He was courtesy personified, and he was quiet yet firm, but he never ever insulted any member of the bar, even when he realized that sometimes lawyers were crossing the boundaries, including the law officers. But he maintained his composition, and he maintained his poise, and he treated everybody with great dignity. And that, one thing about Justice Joseph, it's not that Justice Joseph is outstanding when it comes to constitutional law or administrative law or criminal law. His judgments in many areas reflect brilliant mind and a very, constant search for truth. Arbitration law, electricity law, criminal law. Take, for example, this Gutkas. He recently gave a decision where, the high courts are granting stay against this, very clever way of selling gutkas into market by keeping the materials in two separate pouches and selling them. And he came down heavily and said that, look, we are destroying a whole generation of people, and I will not allow that. So, he had that kind of a beautiful approach to almost every branch of law that he really looked into and was confronted with. So that makes him a very interesting judge. It was a joy to appear before him for everybody, a senior most lawyer or a junior most lawyer. He heard everybody patiently, very patiently.
My last question, and I think it flows almost naturally, if not automatically, from what you've just said. I know it's wrong to identify the Supreme Court with any one judge, but would you accept that the court is likely to miss Justice Joseph very considerably?
Well, I would definitely say that the court will be much more poorer because in terms of both intellectualism and in terms of courage and integrity, he was an epitome of all these qualities. And I have no doubt that even as a member of the collegium, his contribution must have been very, very sound and very good. So to that extent also, we need We need in collegium judges who really are able to take a very, very strong view about the appointments to high positions in the high courts and the Supreme Court, and who can only select judges with strong character, integrity, and other qualities. And to that extent, I think Justice Joseph's contribution, which is, of course, collegium functions in an opaque manner, but I have no doubt that in his own way he contributed to that also. So I think overall, yes, Justice Joseph will be missed very much by most of the lawyers in the court, and they will really feel his absence in times to come.
I'll repeat one of the sentences from your last answer because I think it sums up what you think of Justice Joseph and also how important he will be when the history of the Supreme Court is written. You said the Supreme Court will be much poorer, not just in terms of intellectualism, but also courage and integrity without Justice Joseph. I thank you for having made time for me, Mr. Dave. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.